You absolutely could not script 2020. Hello, welcome to Dangerous Policy. My name is Crispin, and as we speak, the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, and his wife Melania have tested positive for COVID-19. This is just an insane year. You could not have scripted it at all. Like, no drama series editor would take you seriously. You've got this globally, historically successful economy. Everything's booming. You get whacked from a pandemic that comes out of China. Everyone goes into lockdown and fear. The economy tanks. And then, you have this bruising primary race where it all gets initially won by Bernie Sanders and then overtaken by Joe Biden. And then you have the death of a Supreme Court justice 6 weeks out from the election. And then just immediately after the first presidential debate, when, over 7 million Americans have contracted the disease, the president and the first lady are test positive. Now, that is just something that we are all trying to wake up from. And as a consequence, the betting markets themselves have had to freeze. As I speak now, you are not able to bet on who will be the winner of the 2020 presidential election, simply because we're in unprecedented times. All right, so first and foremost, before I go on to the political analysis, I definitely want to give my best wishes to the president and the first lady and his family, and hope for a speedy and straightforward recovery. And to that end, there is a lot of promise. First of all, he would have had a limited viral load, right? His exposure to the people who are infected would have been limited by the fact they have very strict controls around the president, a lot of protocols protecting him. So yes, he's tested positive, but it's probably been a relatively mild exposure. And to that they've obviously dealt with him at an early stage of the infection and they can start the treatment plan right away. And the fact that, of course, the president will have the very best medical services and the greatest physicians that have ever lived. So all of that sits well in his favor. On the converse, it must be said, he is of senior years. He is well into his 70s. He's male, and he has a high body mass index, all of which are critical factors in complications for this extraordinarily deadly disease. So even though, I would hope and expect him to recover, that doesn't mean that it'll happen without problems or incidents or real drama along the way. And it could be quite a lengthy process. So full confidence, but also, a certain degree of anxiety and hope that this all goes really well. Now, the problem is politically, and just from our own humanity, the same cannot be said for a lot of people. A lot of people on the radical left have come out today with the most horrific, vitriolic, absurd obscenities that, I can think of. A lot of people wishing the absolute worst on the president who's been exposed to a deadly disease. Now, there is something wrong with you if you think that way. If you're so politically, ideologically possessed that you can't separate yourself from just the sheer humanity that so many people are going through, and to wish the best for the head of state, then there is something deficient in you. You've lost your way in a certain sense. And that is the way that people who see all this, and this is going to be played out over and over again across the media as people say terrible things and it gets amplified and played back. The average person does not think that way. The average person instinctively goes, oh my goodness, somebody has a terrible disease. I hope and wish them well. That's a human response, not a political response, a human response. And that would have been true for a lot of people on the left who saw Boris Johnson get sick, who wished him well. And as a consequence of that, his popularity dramatically increased. It humanized him. So when you have these extreme leftists saying these terrible things, that can only play well for Donald Trump politically, because all the swing voters will take one look at that and go, I don't want to have anything to do with those people. they're terrible human beings and I don't want to vote the way they're telling me to vote. So they'll either vote for the president or they just won't vote. So that will politically play out well. The second thing that will play out well is that it gives the president that sense of autoritatis. That is that he is exposing himself to the same trials and tribulations and hardships of the troops. Okay. People in America are suffering as a consequence of this pandemic, and now he is also suffering, and that will humanize him in the eyes of many Americans, that he's going through the same struggles. And yet the Trump being Trump, he will not be able to sit still and be idle while he lies there in bed and being treated. Now, he's going to exercise as much vigor as he can muster to continue to communicate, continue to run the affairs of state, and continue to campaign. So while he won't be able to go out of his isolation and expose himself to people at his rallies, what he will be able to do is to film himself. There'll be things about his treatment, his symptoms, the things he's going through, and that will really mollify those people that think of him as this, heartless Jupiterian, nightmare. He will actually seem like a person that they can relate to. And Trump at his best has a lot of humor. He didn't have that in that first debate where he seemed very angry and aggressive and bullish. He actually does have a sense of humor, and he will be able to make some jokes out of this, and that will also play well with him. The other thing is that the media will have to have a bit more of a kid gloves approach to him. They have said the most extraordinary things about the president these past few years, and they absolutely are shilling for Biden all the way to election day. Well, now they will know that if they go too hard on the president while he and his wife are struggling with the deadly pandemic, then that's going to backfire as well. It'll backfire exactly the same way as those horrible trolls that are saying terrible things. If the media are seen to be ganging up on someone who is actually battling a disease and doing it with a sense of humor. I would also fully expect the president to show up to the next debate. Obviously, probably not in person as an infectious, patient, but he via Zoom, via whatever mechanism, he could show up with drips and oxygen masks and whatever else, and still show himself to have more vigor, more energy, more commitment, more enthusiasm for the debate than his opponent, Joe Biden. Joe Biden is now going to be even more greatly contrasted with his opponent. Trump could not have hoped to have had an opponent more kind of like Joe Biden at a time when he himself is going to be suffering, because if he was facing a really young opponent with a lot of enthusiasm and ideas and vision for the future, then Trump's infirmity will kind of weigh on the minds of many Americans. But if Trump still shows more energy than his Democratic opponent, then that is going to compound the advantage and sympathy that he has. And that will also contrast with his first debate, where he came across as too bullish, too hot. Well, now those same traits are just going to make him look committed, dedicated, determined, with great fortitude and great energy. So that's all going to change the narrative completely. And then at the backdrop, you've got the US Supreme Court nomination with Amy Coney Barrett. That's going to look great as well. Like he's got, someone with a really a sympathetic face and personal story and family on one hand, and then his own personal struggles on the other. So the Democrats are really going to be struggling at this point. We're going to expect this to play very well for the president in terms of his popularity, as long as he can stave off the disease. I do wish him well in that endeavor. And if it, even if, I didn't support Trump, which I kind of do, even if you didn't support Trump, then, if your guy can't win despite this setback, then maybe they should have won in the first place. You've got to put the humanity first. And I'm glad that, I suspect that many people will do that. And President Trump himself has shown himself to do that in the past as well. He has stopped his rallies when there have been medical incidents. His human reaction to the death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg was very raw and very honest. I thought that in that moment where he was out there on the tarmac and the journalist told him, and he was getting it fresh, when he was saddened to hear the passing of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, I actually think that he respected her opposition, her staying power, her willingness to fight on and try and outlive his presidency. I think part of Donald Trump was rooting for her because he does respect those kinds of demonstrations of fortitude, even if they're not in his personal interest. And that, there are many criticisms people have of Donald Trump, but I think respect for his opponents and strength and fortitude and endurance is definitely not one of those criticisms. I think that is a genuine thing about him. He respects that no matter who that is. So I think that will come through in this process as well, and people will start to look at the president in a different light. And for the president to win, he just needs to win the swing states. He doesn't need, the people who were never going to vote for him to vote for him. He just needs, Luke-toast sort of Democrats to not turn out in large numbers. And nobody wants to vote for Joe Biden, right? Nobody is enthusiastic for Joe Biden. There's an old saying in American politics, Democrats fall in love, Republicans fall in line. So Republicans will vote for the leader because they care about the Supreme Court. They care about sort of shared values no matter what. And people who personally dislike Donald Trump will vote for him and turn out to the polls irrespective of that, plus his massive wave of support from people that had previously been, working class Democrats who make up Trump's base. That's a formidable coalition. Joe Biden doesn't have any of that. All he has are Southern black voters who miss Obama, and he has people that really hate Donald Trump. Now, with that former group, he kind of squandered it a bit. He made that announcement that, if you don't vote for me, you're not black. It kind of really said that, I'm taking advantage of you kind of feeling. And then in the first presidential debate, although, yes, the president made some mistakes, one of Joe Biden's grave errors is that he needs people who remember the Obama years, when everything seemed to make sense, and that, yes, he was part of that, and therefore voting for Biden will restore respect and dignity to the presidency. Well, he squandered all of that in the first debate. He called the president personal names. He made all these attacks. He really came down to Trump's level when it came to the dirty street fighting of politics. Now, some people might respect that, but not the people he needs to turn out to the polls. The other group that he attacked were enthusiastic liberal voters, and they're people that he needs to turn out as well. But those people really like Bernie Sanders. They like universal basic income. They like universal healthcare. And Biden trashed all of that in the first presidential debate. So the only people that will turn out for Biden are those people that just hate Donald Trump so much that they will vote for an empty chair, irrespective of what happens. And some of those people are going to soften as the president goes through this enormous personal struggle and his wife goes through the same. So all of this plays really well for Donald Trump. Now, of course, none of this means it's a done deal for the president to win the election. There's so much that is uncertain about this. There are so many ways this could turn, and one just hopes that the disease does not overtake them and that they actually pull through it. So that's where I'll leave it. I really am, Mr. President and your family and Melania, really rooting for you to get through this nice and quick, and to get back onto the campaign trail in your full capacity. If you found value in this sort of takeaway, and please do like and subscribe. I talk about this a lot. We'll have a lot more on the presidential election. Leave your comments down below. I do engage with them. We all talk about them in the weekend review as well. And I will see you in the next video. Thank you.